Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me, as always, are my co-host Nick Martin, and back from his beautiful Arizona vacation, Tim Kalinowski. And just a warning off the top here. I don't know if this deserves a PSA, but I'm going to give a PSA for this show. We're going to recommend two bets on two teams tonight for this episode that are combined 1-17 and 1 in their last 20 games combined. So strap in or run away. I don't know which one we'd rather for you and your mental well-being, but let's get into it. We'll start with two teams that don't make that list. Sabres and Habs start this 5-game slate. Buffalo's minus 132, the Habs plus 112 at home, total of 6.5. Nick, I don't want to bet this one at all.
Yeah, I don't want to bet this one at all either. I At plus 114, I actually lean towards Montreal for as not great as I think they've been. I feel like they're actually playing right there at with the Sabres. The Sabres mini stabilization. I know they actually played quite well versus the Ducks, but the main reason they've stabilized, and I made this point, is that UPL has just been unreal in goal. But we see these kinds of runs from all sorts of goalies all the time. Lyon, um, who was I thinking of tonight? But it's just such a common thing that you see these young guys come in, have a good run, Nico Dawes, that sort of thing. It's just not something you want to bank on. There's a lot of volatility, a lot of variance to goaltending. A lot of it comes down to what chances bounce in the net and what chances, were never supposed to be saved in the first place. So I think something like that isn't something worth hanging your hat on. I don't think that the Sabres have defended overly well recently. Their underlying process is pretty bad. It's actually over the last five worse than the Canadiens. I think that with the injuries they have, you're seeing a bigger role for Connor Clifton. That's a bad thing. He's been horrible, one of the worst signings in the league, which not picking on anyone, I didn't think he'd be this bad at all. But
Come on,
uh,
Bruins legend, Cliffy. Come
yeah,
on.
no, he's
Yeah.
been
I
fine.
wanted him to replace Scott Mayfield, but
Yeah, no, it's one of
He'd be a
those
great
hindsight.
Islander.
It's a hindsight 2020 thing, I think, to pick on that one because I didn't think he'd be this bad, but he's been bad. He gets a big role. Their decore's not overly good. They haven't defended very well. And I think in time, we're going to see UPL come down to earth. He had a really tough game versus the Ducks. And then I look at the other end of the spectrum for the Canadiens, Montembeault, one of the best goaltenders in the league right now. So if anything, I think I don't mind the Canadiens as an underdog. I'll probably keep my eye on Slavkovsky over two and a half shots again. But I also think the fact that he got to 7 versus Saturday versus the Caps is going to ruin the number. They're also playing Buffalo, so I'd be surprised if we get better than even money again. And especially because in that game, Matheson was finally passing to him. Like at the end, we looked to him 3 times and he missed the empty net. I think that's the way it should be. I said in my article on that game that I thought the Canadian staff should have specifically been showing Matheson why that pass was a good option. It helps balance things. It's better than him taking a shot from the top. And then they can't just cheat on Caulfield on the other side. So I think there's still room to grow in terms of his volume. He's playing really, really well. So I think that's kind of my prop to watch, and just leaning with the Habs would be my take on that one.
Yeah, props to you, Nick, for digging something out of that with a possible look on Slavkovsky. These two teams are, in my opinion, pretty unbettable, especially with them being like the numbers being tight, right? Like it's only minus 130 favorite or so. Like much rather play these teams as big dogs in a different situation. But I guess I would lean Habs as well because I think it's more of a coin flip than people think, or at least this line is showing. So, like, if I had to bet it, I would just take the plus money side, no matter who it was. It happens to be the Habs in this case, but yeah, I'm not stoked to watch this. I kind of forget these teams exist at this point in the year and hand up. I know you can't do that as a gambler, but sometimes you know what, make the league smaller. I'm going to eliminate these teams from my bank here.
yeah, at these prices, I think it's warranted. Like the Ducks closed plus, I bet the Ducks against the Sabres on was that Sunday? They were plus 170,
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm saying,
yeah,
right?
that now they're this price that you're getting the Habs, who I know are better than the Ducks, and it's a different situation, but it's it's pretty crazy that that number on the Ducks was nuts, and I think this one is just very, very milk toast. A game I don't think is milk toast, and this is one of those two teams I was alluding to off the top with the warning. The Chicago Blackhawks are hosting the Philadelphia Flyers. Chicago's plus 158 at the time of recording. Flyers sitting minus 192 on the road. A total of 5.5 for this one. The Flyers have been a pretty good team to follow pattern with for most of the season. With you want to look at them when they're punching up as big underdogs. We said after everybody kind of threw the towel in for them right before the All-Star break when they lost 5 in a row that was a perfect signal to buy back in on the Flyers. They go ahead, they beat the Panthers, the Jets, the Kraken, and the Coyotes 4 in a row. Then they have lost 2 on the spin to Toronto in overtime and New Jersey. So this team is like they have the ability, I think, to beat anybody in any situation, but they still have that ability to lose to anybody in situation. They had an ugly loss to Ottawa during that stretch. They got shut out by Montreal. Excuse me, by Detroit. They beat Montreal in a tight shootout. In a winning streak right before that. They've had losses to teams like Seattle, Calgary, Nashville, and I mean the Islanders. It's not a team that I think you can really trust at these kind of prices. Although, like they've been really good all season, and Chicago. I mean I hate to say it like this, but they've been bad but not terrible, and they're getting NHL bodies back in the lineup more and more with each passing game, and that is a huge deal. Something Nick points out quite a bit. It's like I'm gonna bring him up. We joke about him in our group chat a lot. Anthony Beauvillier, just because he was an Islanders legend, but just getting him into the lineup and pushing a guy. I know he's not on the team this year, but like Buddy Robinson last year, like pushing a guy like that out of the lineup, it does make a difference here. So getting Chicago with a top 6 that, and boy, I hope you're sitting down because this is something else. But Bedard, Kurashev, Foligno, Beauvillier, Dickinson, and Anderson. At least it looks like the 32nd best team in the NHL's top 6 and not like an AHL top 6 anymore. That's a long-winded way to saying I like the Blackhawks here as an underdog at home. Starting to show at least a pulse with Bedard back in the lineup, Tim.
Yeah, I think that, we love this Flyers team, and like none of us are Flyers fans, but it's been hard to not, love what they've been doing. And it feels, I would say they're almost like our Eastern Conference Yotes in terms of like, they've just, we love a team that punches up and it gives us a good like underdog price in certain spots. But like you said, that's certainly not the case in this situation. And Nick, what we said a while back in that certain teams that cover the effort spread, Chicago, I know this like losing streak here, but they like fight, man. It's just if they could have if this was football and they could have like a plus 16.5 point spread, we would love to bet them over and over again. But that's just not the case. You have to take the money line where, we're never really ever, plus 1.5. So I'll also add in with Philly here. I think it's worth looking into. They're really streaky. If you just look at their schedule, it's L, win. And then I just don't think Urson can, like the amount of games he's been forced to play here, since the Carter Hart situation. I think the All-Star break came at a perfect time for them, specifically for Urson to slow down and kind of get his bearings a bit. It's a lot of Urson, which is just, he probably is a fine backup goalie, but it's a lot on his plate. You know what I mean? And I just don't know if continuing to roll him out there, like they don't really have a choice, but it doesn't bode well for them.
Yeah, I thought I was going to end up on Chicago here, but I think minus 192 is fair in my opinion. I agree. Like I think Chicago's probably playing a little better than people think, and they're starting to punch up, but I'm not quite low enough on Philly to want to bite at this number yet.
But also, sorry, Leibov, just to jump in, like I feel like Chicago continues to lose with just a team that, I mean, it's obvious, but just has more firepower. Like they can kind of slog you 5-on-5 and like during the game and get some like Mrazek to play well. And then it's like, okay, well, yeah, the team they're playing, it just has more pure goal scorers. Philly is not really that team. So that's why it kind of profiles a little bit better for that kind of matchup.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also wouldn't be surprised if Cal Peterson starts this one to give Urson a blow. Like you said, he's played every game since the All-Star break. He's played well for most of them, but they've got a really tough couple games right after this Blackhawks game. They play the Rangers and the Penguins is a back-to-back, so you'd assume that Peterson will get one of those, and you wonder if Tortorella's like, I got to play this guy at some point before, and this is as you could serve him up the Blackhawks and before this 3-game stretch where you're playing teams that are either you're chasing like the Rangers. I know that they're out of it, but or teams that are chasing you like Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay and I guess Washington right after that. So yeah, Blackhawks for me and Tim, Nick will be passing, but I'm not letting you pass on this next one. Our annual or I guess biannual bet on the Coyotes to upset the Leafs. Toronto is -210. It will be a home game for them in Mullet Arena in Arizona. The Coyotes +172 at the time of recording, a total of 6.5. It is ugly for Arizona. I cannot remember the last time the Coyotes won a game. They've come close of late. This is something we always point out when teams are on these long schnides, is that usually they do show a couple decent efforts. They show like a pulse before they start to turn things around. And turn things around. The Coyotes have to do. There are a whopping 0-9-1 in their last 10 with a -23 goal difference. But we're good against Colorado. I think we pointed out that was a little bit of a fortunate win for the Avalanche. They got a bunch of breaks. The Oilers game too, like they were in it until they weren't. So yeah, it's not terrible for Arizona. 0-9-1's not terrible right now, Nick. I think this is a decent spot. Also, one of the first signals we always love to point out to people who are betting hockey is as soon as everybody starts to in the national media starts to like get behind a team on a hot streak, it's when like the market's gonna be too high, and it seems like that's happening right now with the Leafs going 3 or 4-0 with Morgan Riley out of the lineup.
Yeah, I like Arizona. Like you said, I think they've been quietly knocking at the door the entire time, like all of February since the break. They were pretty good versus Knights in the first game back. Their overtime loss versus the Preds, I thought they were clearly the better team. Tough loss in Philly. Like you said, with the Avs, they couldn't get a break. And then the Oilers game, like you look at that, the way the Oilers are demolishing teams right now and the way it was actually contested, I still think it's a positive comment. This feels like the ultimate game where like a lot of people will be shocked when it ultimately ends up being kind of close. And that's a little scary to say right now. The one thing that's crushing the Coyotes, and I thought this was still even true Sunday versus the Avs, is that they're not getting any goaltending. And that is really scary when you're talking about this kind of a team.
Bad, Nick.
It's been
Bad.
awful. And goals at the worst times. Like maybe overall Vejmelka's performance was okay Sunday. But that Jack Johnson goal was a complete muffin at the worst possible time. Like they had worked so hard to get to where they were in that game. And then you just have a defender that never scores, scoring on like a 60-mile-per-hour shot from outside the dot. Like that just can't be a goal at a big moment. So I think Vejmelka's still better than he's shown. I'd be pretty confident he gets this game. I hope maybe the number gets there too, because I think like the Arizona's underlying process, I don't think has been as bad as their current analytics. Like I've watched a lot of these games. I think they've been decent. Now they have more guys back in the lineup too. So feels like the ultimate time to buy on them. I thought we might maybe get a better number, but I don't mind plus 172 at all. Definitely play that for a smaller play. And then it's not even like picking on the Leafs either. I think they're playing pretty well. And I can't quite get there. The other thing I'm kind of excited to see is I think Austin Matthews is going to be the shortest price to score a goal of the year by like some margin in this game. But considering the total of 5.5 and the Leafs being -210 in Arizona, everyone's going to bet it. And it'll be goal 50 if he does it. I feel like he will probably do it. But I think it is going to be an interesting note as a bettor to see him be like -1, I don't know, maybe -160 to score. I don't even.
Yeah.
We'll probably see some.
And one thing, just
prices
before we
out there.
pass it to Tim, is that something you pointed out to me like a year ago during Ovechkin, mania to get 800 or whatever is when you see a price like that and you want to be part of the milestone game. So if you are like a Leafs fan and you want to bet on Matthews to score, bet him to score the last goal. Usually, like is something to look for because as Nick has brought up, like these players will look for him more. When the empty net if there is an empty net situation, he doesn't play for the Islanders, so he's allowed to score empty nets. And he will be on the ice for a good majority of it. And his teammates will try to set him up in that situation as well. Tim,
The other,
and
yeah, I was just going to say the other caveat that kind of goes right into what you're saying with that, because this is the point I thought you were going to make. If you're going to bet Matthews to score in this game, bet him right away. You know everyone's going to bet it, and there's no market. There's no sharp bettors that are going to be slamming in money on no if you gave them a good enough price. So if you're going to bet this, do it at open, because all the books, I'd say pretty much with confidence, will open at some sort of a price and then move away from that as all the money comes in.
That's a excuse me. That's a very good tip, Leboff, on last goal. I watched too much of your Islanders that I've discounted that you are indeed allowed to score empty net goals. So that was a good point by you if you are going to bet Matthews. I mean, here's the thing about this matchup that I think is kind of baked into the price, but why it makes the Yotes this losing streak, they don't get anything free, right? They don't get anything like the easy power play goal. Like, I was in the building Friday night against Carolina. It's like, oh, here we go. Get dealt kind of a freebie power play. Here we go. And they don't bury. Like, they're bottom half in power play percentage. Like, they just make it very difficult on themselves and not getting anything free. And I think when I close my eyes and think of teams that can do that, it's like Toronto mostly at the top of that list in terms of so many dangerous scores to just play great 5-on-5. Then all of a sudden, it's Nylander short side bar down. It's like all that work for that. Like that's what's been extremely frustrating about this Yotes team and makes it, borderline impossible to bet on my end. It's hard to watch, right?
Yeah, the one thing too throw out there is like just from like pure roster composition. If you look at what's left of the Yotes, and obviously we think this based off what we said at the start of the year, but I still think they should be able to defend a lot better than they've shown. They've had a lot of tough games recently, so I kind of think we're at the low end of like their defensive upside. I honestly wouldn't hate a play on the under in this game. I tried it on Monday just because I got sucked in on the number and it was a disaster. But I still think in time they can stabilize in terms of their defensive play. That's going to be kind of the calling card of their team if they turn it around at all. So I feel like under 6.5 at plus 110 is getting pretty tempting for me too. Like, or if you wanted to try the Yotes to win in a low scoring game, I feel like that could be a decent long shot punt as well.
One more thing to tie a knot on all of this is I would say I was thinking of baseball. I think last year or the year before the Red Sox were on some sort of run where like they had this great winning record against teams with losing records, and then they couldn't beat anyone that had a winning record. I think just blindly, I didn't do the actual math, but looking at the Yotes, I feel like that they're kind of in that territory. They beat a lot of they win a lot of games against like kind of even matchups. Like, I don't think they have a whole lot of upsets on their list when you just look at their schedule. So that's kind of what scares me too. I don't know if you guys see the same thing.
Yeah, I mean they're not beating anyone lately.
Yeah, okay,
But
fair enough.
The
Yeah.
Leafs, well, and we'll talk about how the Leafs always blow games like this. It does feel like the game the Leafs blow, right? Lost 10 in a
Right.
row, all of that. People will be kind of handicapping it from that front too. And the thing that will make that especially likely is that I just think Arizona's playing slightly better than people think. Like I think the last two contests they've punched up pretty well and just haven't gotten the result at all. And if they play the exact same way, which hopefully they will, I think it'll be one of those things where people are just like shocked that this is a game, but I think it can be. And then it'll be that, the Leafs playing down to them will be the narrative, which sucks if Arizona actually wins this. But
Which is awesome. It's a talk radio game. You can
well, I mean, the
the
Leafs
narrative
this
can
year,
work.
I don't know if you guys saw those things ranking like where teams were versus like each tier of people in the standings. But the Leafs win percentage versus bottom teams was like exactly where they should be. Like they're at like 10th, which is exactly where they're at in the standings. So it's not really been a narrative, but it feels like in this spot it could end up being a narrative again.
Okay, we'll move on. But before we do, I'll just remind people that the Islanders have scored 0 empty net goals. They have taken 8 shot attempts in 32 minutes and 35 seconds against an empty net this season. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that in sports, not just hockey, just in general. Game of the night. I would argue it's Leafs and Coyotes, but most people will say Bruins and Oilers. Boston plus 115-ish on the road. Edmonton minus 140-ish, and a total of 6.5. The Bruins end their homestand, 7-game homestand coming out of the break at 2-3-2. They get the win against Dallas. I don't think it was all that encouraging. I thought Jeremy Swayman was good. They needed 9 rounds in a shootout and a late game tying goal from David Pastrnak with like a minute 40 to even get that to the extra session. I think Boston is just in a little bit of a rut here. I don't think Edmonton has been playing their best hockey, but I think when you look at what the Oilers are doing and doing well, it kind of they can kind of just go toe to toe with Boston in terms of 5-on-5 play, preventing high danger scoring chances, goaltending, even like you'd still give the edge to the Bruins there, but Skinner has generally just been really good um, for quite a bit here. So I think there's enough pointing to the Oilers at minus 140. I wouldn't go any further beyond that though, Nick.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Boston's play, we've kind of all been waiting for it because it just doesn't look like on paper a team with their center depth should be able to own the amount of play that they have. I know that they have a really good defense core and a lot of good pieces, but I feel like they've had too many question marks to be like a true President's Trophy winning team again all year, and we were kind of waiting for the bottom to fall out. I think it has. I think that Stars game, like you said, didn't convince me on anything. It was just a classic Bruins win where their goalie was better than what other teams have, but I thought the flaws were still there. So I don't mind Edmonton here. One bet that I'm going to have my eye on, I'm hoping to go with Allmark or Swayman over, I think it'll probably be 27 and a half, maybe 28 and a half saves. I would play to 28 and a half. I think that'll be the way that I want to target the way that Oilers can control play and generate so many chances. Skinner had a bit of a shaky game last time out. I feel like I'm not super excited about the Oilers at this number versus a Bruins team that's so good at finding ways to win, but I think they'll get their chances. And I think that the one thing that's been crazy over the last stretch for Boston, over the last 10 games, they have given up the 11th most shots against. They're giving up 31 shots against per game. So they aren't really controlling that much of the play. They're not defending like we have traditionally seen, and that's over a pretty large sample. So I think maybe that'll be the number that comes in a little low for me here, where I could definitely see it being a game where maybe he makes some big saves early and the game stays close and the Oilers keep having to push for offense. So I think that'll be my favorite bet on this game.
Yeah, I'm on the Oil here. I think that the Bruins have played some pretty ugly hockey since the All-Star break, and it's kind of, I guess, what we were waiting for in terms of saying that we don't think they're totally a heavyweight in terms of the top of the league. They have too many holes, and their goaltending makes up for it. Like you just said, I was on the Stars in that game over the weekend or Monday, whatever it was. Stars are up 3-2. I get on the plane, find Wi-Fi, refresh my phone. I'm like, how the hell did that just happen? So, but it's just the most Bruins thing in the world. I'm on Edmonton here, minus 140. I think that they just give them the Oilers can win more ways than the Bruins can. It's not looking good in Boston compared to what their standard has been. I'm looking to fade them. I think that teams are kind of figuring them out a little bit, and if their goaltending doesn't play tremendous, they're kind of in trouble.
Yeah, they're on a pretty big streak of putting together like very average showings here, like far too often. I think you talk about like the Flames game, the Caps game was horrible, the Kraken
Horrible.
game. I think the Kings game was not great when the other team's goalies clearly just doesn't have a very good night and you don't find a way to win. That's not great. And then Stars, you win in the shootout. Thomas Harley hit the post like 25 seconds earlier, and you had a 4-on-3 power play in overtime. Like it just feels like it's either they're going to win marginally behind pretty good goaltending, or it's not going to work out right now. So, yeah, I think that does kind of lead to a bit of a overvalued profile.
And Pastrnak has to bail them out a lot.
Yep.
They're like depth scoring. It's like, Marchand's had a pretty good year, but beyond that, it's been like, okay, is Pastrnak gonna, kind of bail us out of this and get us a big goal?
We'll talk more about the trade deadline probably next week and maybe reserve like the Wednesday show to kind of serve up a primer. But the Bruins to me are a classic team where they're teams like last year with the Rangers and the Leafs, I guess a little bit too. Like those trades didn't really move the needle, but the Bruins are a team that has like a clear need. And if they do fill it, I think that they can exponentially raise their ceiling. Whereas other teams, like even when we talked about the Lindholm trade with Vancouver, like yeah, they had a need for a number 2 center upgrade, but it wasn't something that would made us think differently of the team. And I think the Bruins are going to be one of a very few teams that actually think uh, an addition, especially the right one, would make a difference because of what you were just talking about, Tim. Okay, we'll wrap this up with the Blue Jackets and Ducks before we get to our best bet. And boy, Columbus is an even money underdog. Anaheim's -120, total of 6.5. Nick, you're looking at the total. I would love to meet the people who are excited to bet the money, either money line in this game, but the the over, I think I can understand more.
Yeah, I like the over in this one. I think both these teams recently have just been in a complete kind of like sloppy disarray type game way too consistently. The Ducks were treacherous defensively versus Buffalo. I still think they have the offensive firepower to kind of punch up and generate. I think we've seen the low end of play from Troy Terry and Leo Carlson recently. They've got Mason McTavish back. Like I think they have the offensive firepower to pay off versus a Columbus team that doesn't defend overly well. But same goes for the Blue Jackets. And I think both goaltenders in this matchup probably be below average. We'll see if it's Gibson or Dostal, but I think maybe Dostal, and then Merzlikins is starting tonight. So weak goaltending. I think both teams are kind of playing loosey-goosey, up-tempo hockey right now and have a little more scoring power than I think maybe people might be rating. So I like the over at -118, and I think I would go down to -135 given the ideal goaltending matchup here.
Yeah. Nick, promise me you'll bet this over. Because I'm afraid of dipping my toe in here that it definitely bodes. I need a buddy here because it definitely bodes for an over, but you could just see them also just both of these teams just absolute clunker because they're hanging on for dear life. They're playing out the string, that's for sure. A little shocking that and I've Money Puck pulled up here, and high danger shots against. The Columbus is second, right behind San Jose in terms of allowing high danger shots against. But Anaheim isn't down there till like 23, which is I feel like a little bit shocking. Maybe it's just.
But that's whole season split too, right? Because keep in
yeah,
mind the way they started the year really helps that data a lot.
yeah.
And then like there's a pretty huge gap. We've talked about this between Tarasov and Merzlikins. Like they're really not comparable at all. One has a slightly better than league average save percentage and slightly better than expected, or has given up slightly less goals than expected. And then Tarasov's 877. So it's a pretty huge story. Maybe, it's another one of those things people don't pay that much attention to Columbus, but it's definitely a big difference when he's in versus Merzlikins.
Okay, best bets now. We'll start with you, Tim.
Yep, what we just touched on, Oilers will be my best bet here. I'm still a little nervous about Boston here. I think that they for sure need to make a move, like you said, Leboff. And as we were sitting here, pointing to that same exact thing, team points. Pasternak leads the team of points with 80, and then it's Marchand at 51, Coyle at 45, McAvoy at 38. It is they could use some help, and Oilers just I think have a lot more firepower to kind of put some dents in the brick wall that has been the Bruins net minding situation.
I'll go with Chicago. I think that this is a team that is making marginal improvements, and when you're really, really bad, that matters. And getting bodies and NHL bodies into the lineup makes them a little bit more dangerous, especially against a team like Philadelphia, who play a really good 5-on-5 game, but just don't have that scoring talent or the power play to take advantage of the opportunities that they will get against a team like Chicago. So I'll take a shot on the Blackhawks. It's ugly, but I think that the price is right here.
And I'll round it out with the Coyotes. They're at +180. I don't know if you'll need to rush to bet this one either. I think more than other times, I feel like I could see maybe sharp money still liking the Leafs here, so I wouldn't be surprised. But I think that what the Yotes have done recently is being a little underrated. Tough to say when they're on a 10-game losing streak, but it feels like they've been knocking at the door, and they've come up short because of in large, I think, how tough the matchups have been. It's been the Wild, the Hurricanes, the Avs, the Oilers entering this one. But I think 3 of those games they played quite well and could have gotten a better result. I feel like there's a lot of room to grow at full health here with the roster now healthy. And it does feel a little bit like one the Leafs will kind of blow. I think they're getting a lot of credit for this winning streak without Riley. And I respect that, but I think it's just one of those things they've kind of been playing at this level all year, and they ended up on the good side of some variance in these games. So yeah, for me, I like the Yotes here. I think they're going to make it competitive and hang around.
There you have it. Oilers, Blackhawks, and Coyotes. One of these things is not like the others. With that, we'll wrap this one up. We'll be back again on Thursday to preview a little bit of a deeper slate. And until then, best of luck with all your bets. Thank you to Noah. Please rate, review, and subscribe. And good luck to Tim and his team in their hockey game tonight.